Years went by until one day not long ago, visitors came to see Sir Topham Hatt. "We want to find Duke," they said, "and make him happy again." Maps lay everywhere. "If we follow the old line shown here on the map," they said, "we'll travel north of the village and then into the mountains. And look, there's a sign for the old station. If Duke's anywhere, he's there."
When I first started making 009 customs, there was one Thomas & Friends character I knew I had to make before anybody else. And that was Duncan. But after Duncan, the decision for who would be next was pretty simple. Every narrow gauge railway has a story, and almost every story has a hero. The hero in question today being Duke, as Thomas iconically describes him.
"Or you might run into danger, and Duke is not here to save you." Duke?" stuttered Toby. "You mean our hero?" A large painting of Duke hung in the engine shed.
There's no denying that Duke is a fan-favorite character, and there's also no denying that he's a favorite of mine. So altogether, this was a project that I was quite eager to start, but like most projects, definitely had its road bumps. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be showcasing this guy, and explaining to you guys how I made him, the long and short of it, and what exactly it took to bring our Duke to life. Keep in mind, the model itself is not yet complete, as there's still some detail that I'm wanting to add to him, but I think he's near enough to completion, and honestly I've shown him off enough. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. When I first set out to make this model, my original idea was to wait for Kato to release their Prince and Princess models, and upon receiving those, repaint them and make Duke. However, at the time there was no expected release date, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't really like waiting, especially if I can do it myself. So I took my searching to Shapeways and tried to find a princess body. There were a couple of options I looked at, but truth be told, I'm not the biggest fan of Shapeways plastic. It breaks very easily, and was more inclined to get something printed in resin. Eventually my searches went to eBay, and I found just that. An 009 George England Prince or Princess body, that thankfully came printed in resin. The body itself is made by 3D Factory UK, and I'll have their shop link down below, but once I found this, it was a pretty quick purchase, and the moment the shell arrived, it was time to get to work. One of the biggest reasons I personally prefer resin printing isn't only its durability, but also the fact that you normally have to sand it and prepare it a lot less, and this shell is a pretty good example of that. The sanding I had to do was very minimal, and the same day I set out to smooth it, I was able to start priming and painting it. The first step was to cover him in Tamiya gray primer to make sure every surface was smooth, giving that a couple hours to dry, but unfortunately it was here I would run into my first problem. The main idea at first was to go for a television series look, and in the television series, Duke is a very light brown, and this was a color I didn't have on hand. But I did have a darker, almost chocolate brown, and putting this next to the Railway Series Duke, I could see a pretty good resemblance. So here I would make my first and biggest sacrifice. Instead of going for a strictly TV series Duke, I would make a Railway Series and TV series hybrid, and decided to move forward with the dark brown paint. Before we get further into the painting process, let me explain his chassis. This Duke model runs on a Tomix Percy that I purchased from my good friend Austerity. Unfortunately, Percy didn't run well from the start, so taking him apart for a custom wasn't something I was sad to do, but unfortunately those shortcomings have transferred over to Duke. He is a runner but prefers higher speeds, and unfortunately at slower speeds often likes to stall, and admittedly is quite choppy. I could call that model series accuracy, but would rather and in the future plan to replace such, probably with the same thing just to make sure he runs a little better. His tender uses Gram-Farish spoked wheels, which fit directly into the 3D print, and both of the couplings on the tender were applied by me. At the moment they're sporting standard in-gauge couplings, but whenever necessary or needed I can switch them out for 009 ones. And now that we've covered that, let's get back into the painting process. So the first step was spraying Duke's entire body and shell that brown, and I gave each several coats to make sure it had settled. I would let this dry overnight, and the next day start on his main detailing, that being painting his smokebox and other little details. Using black acrylic paint and a paintbrush, I painted his smokebox and his cab black. Using a red paint pen, I would color his front and back buffer beams, as well as his nameplates, and then for the fun of it would apply a light brown inside of his cab. The model also needed a whistle, so I ended up taking one straight off a Bachmann Thomas and putting it on top of his boiler. Unfortunately, this whistle isn't the most accurate, but for now it does its job, and it really isn't something I'm too worried about. The coal inside of his tinder is actual coal, which was put into a bucket, crushed up, and then put into the tinder, all being held with Woodland Scenic spray tack, and I also added a backlamp that came from a Bachmann Renes. With that, all the model needed was a face, and I actually got the files for a face from Rexecutions, but unfortunately at the moment didn't have a way to print it. So for the time being, Duke is sporting a Bondi Tex face, which unfortunately is way too big for him, and came a bit sun-bleached. With some time, I'll likely attempt to repaint on this, but truth be told, I'm really just happy to see Duke with a face either way, especially one that looks somewhat accurate. Unfortunately, the print itself had a bit of warping in it, so using some black weathering powder, on the advice from the Toad Train, would follow those areas and try to hide them a bit. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we're at with Duke now. I would like to give him lining, but unfortunately don't trust my capabilities in doing such, so at some point I plan to ship this dude off to austerity to hopefully get him really completed. Definitely expect that sometime after Edison. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, this is my Duke model. One that you can definitely expect to see more on, but one I'm still proud of and eager to show off. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for even more train content. There's always more stuff on the way. And if you guys have any ideas or tips on who else I should make, be sure to let me know down below. I'm always eager to hear what you guys think would be cool, especially when it comes to 009. I'm still pretty new to it. But regardless of that, hopefully this video was still fun to watch. And as always, guys, thanks again for watching. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.